time to start the day.
It's Friday. It's time for API storytelling hour. That little intro always makes me smile. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get rid of it. It makes me chuckle for some reason. Yes, it's Friday, and it's my favorite day of the week, right before the weekend, and I get to hang out with my friends and talk about whatever we like. So without hesitation, let me bring in Aidan. What's up?
Hey, Ken. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm no complaints this week. I'm in a pretty decent mood. How about
Awesome. I ran my first track race in like many years since college this week, and I am hooked on it again. So it felt pretty fun.
you? Good. That's healthy. Gets you away from the computer and gets your brain going. So
you cut out for a second.
What are we talking about?
Sorry, I had an internet. It's back now. Today we got a special guest. They go by just a single letter, as all of our favorite people do. We got Z on, who's the founder and CTO at Superface AI, a very cool startup. He used to help companies build the best APIs when he was at Good API and Apiary. And he's the author of our favorite, I think the show's favorite API specification, API Blueprint, Mr. Z.
Yeah. Yes, let's get him in here. Hello.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Doing very good. You got to get in the center of the camera. The screen.
I realize. Very cool.
Z, what is this big face you have behind you? Because it's giving you like the yellow hair.
That's just to make me prettier. Let me adjust it. No, that's of course the legendary Fallout boy.
Yeah, nice. Well, welcome to our API chit chat hour.
Thanks for having me.
Kind of just, yeah. Aidan brought you on, but you and I have been hanging out for many years, talking in various parts of the world, and you're one of those people I miss hanging out with and drinking beers with and talking about API, whatever. And so I'm happy to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. It has been a long journey. As far as I can remember, it was in Detroit, RESTfest, many years ago. I don't know what year was it, 12, maybe 13, 14, something like that. With Steven Klubnik and the usual names. Some of them are no longer following the API development, but still good.
Yeah, the great hypermedia API wars. Those were the days of the.
Exactly. That was Kevin Swiber of Siren, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, versus Mike Kelly of HAL, right? So those were the days.
Mike Amundsen and man, I'm forgetting the other names, but there was a couple other personalities on there. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig back through and have those videos of those conversations as well. So what are you up to these days? Like I follow your blog and your Twitter, your writing and what you're doing on Twitter and some of your talks, but give the audience an overview of what you're doing these days.
Yeah, I'm still stuck with APIs from one way or another, and I guess I like it, and I still feel like there is something that needs to happen, and it didn't happen. Some sort of like unfinished business we had there back 2012 when we started APRA, and I'm still trying to chase some dreams because I think the way we are doing it is probably not the right way, or maybe it is the right way at a given moment in the time, but it's not the way that it should be in the future with all the AI stuff and who knows what will wait for us. So I'm trying to steer us towards going into directions of autonomous distributed systems and thus solving some of the problems of the APIs.
How would you talk about some of those initial problems that you started with so long ago that aren't really, I think the audience, like we can all think of a lot of different things that sort of we'd like to improve in the space. So I'm kind of curious what to you stands out as the biggest issues we need to look at.
Oh, there are so many. There are so many, and after APRA, so with APRA, and I was actually thinking before this talk of ours, API Blueprint, and back then what was called Swagger started to solve basically one simple thing, and it was API documentation. Everything else was then added. Or we can mock from it, we can do testing with it, we can do contract driven, we can do all that stuff. That was just like added on later on these formats, right? But the original pain, the biggest pain that started this revolution in API tools or whatnot was really, I have developed an API, it's a good thing, I want to share with somebody, but I'm so lazy to write the documentation. So that's where we saw the Swagger and then API Blueprint, right? To help facilitate API documentation thing. So that was the historically first problem. I mean, when with commoditizing APIs and promoting APIs, and then everything else just followed. And I think API documentation is still one of the problems today. Like we've been working so many years on that, and still people kind of don't like to write the documentation. Companies need to spend a lot of money, build bespoke developer portals, even figure out how to do it. And nobody likes to read it, nobody likes to write it, yet it's needed. So that's like the still unsolved situation. And to me, I think you still should have two machines at the end of the day talking to each other. And this human-oriented documentation is really just for the operators to connect these two machines, right? So does it need to be there?
Yeah, it's like an interesting way of thinking about it. Like the operator has to write the documentation for another human operator to read, and then they use that to connect the two autonomous things together.
Yeah, that's where we are.
And then it just works until the human again updates and breaks something. Exactly. And then he has to interface with the other human again and fix the thing. And then we're good for a little while again.
Yeah. So did we misname API documentation? Is it just instructions for humans to make the systems talk to each other? Like yes. We're almost attributing too much to the API when we call it that.
It is. And that's when you think about it, that's when you need to have also a good API design. Like most of the I was just reading Matthew's API notes. Here's this nice picture there of like bad API design and these things around it, trying to solve it. So like most of the good API design is considered for people getting a grasp on the API and being able to use the API. Of course, it has some technical implications, like how well performant or scalable or how many calls or whatever you can do with it, but that's always secondary. I think the API design today is mostly about making it in a way so people can actually use it really quick than any other reasons, right? Or also switch between APIs.
What I associate with you and with what you and Jacob did with Apiary is I felt pretty strongly that API Blueprint was the better of the formats, but not just because of the specification itself. It was because of the editor and the tooling. And then I credit you two with really setting in motion the design first collaborative API approach. You Apiary set that into motion. Now it's took on a life of its own, like everything else we got to be careful of that we unleash into the API space. But you two are to blame. We can say you're responsible for this great motion, or you're to blame for it. We can go either route. But that was the important part, is that I felt in the Apiary studio to collaborate and work with people as part of that design process to reduce friction and reduce the challenges in those two humans working together to make things happen. And API Blueprint was a great way to collaborate and iterate and find velocity in that process with people working together. That was I would say the thing that I remember the most.
Yeah, I would agree. Looking back, I would agree with you. This all this, the concept of API design, treat API, as a product, design it first for the sake of the product, but also your product users. These were some thoughts that we were pioneering, and then obviously there come the enterprise sellable features, which were like design governance. Like, okay, if you have a lot of APIs in the company, you probably want them to look alike because of so many reasons, and then there were these other additional things and spin-offs, and of course internal catalogs, which we are now still seeing companies today selling it and building products around developer hubs, or however you want to call it, internal portals, or catalogs of APIs. So then it spun this, but I don't think we solve it. That's my that's my hunch here.
So here, my call before this, well, I had an hour break, but my one before this was Matthew Reinbold. You mentioned Matthew in
Yes.
his Net API notes, and Mike Ralphson, who's technical TDC or TSC on the Open API specification. We have 200,000 Open API definitions, and Matthew wants to be able to go, how do people paginate? And so I know Aidan's ears are going to perk up on this. He wants to ask questions of this corpus of data. And so, and then I have a bunch of questions I want to ask. How do people use headers? How do people use, I have a bunch of different questions. And so we're like, okay, let's do an API first, design first, API on top of these 200,000 APIs that are in a database. So, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble because Postman. So you saying we haven't gotten here yet. So I open up Postman in the Postman editor and I'm go, okay, it's blank, it's empty. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna ask these questions of these 200,000 open APIs? And we fumbled around for like an hour and a half. Like we didn't get anything, anything designed or developed or anything like that. And basically kind of going, well, let's all go back to our corners and just do it. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about it together. And so I would say not only have we not fixed it, like we're going backwards, I feel like in a certain degree.
So you are bringing, you are opening some old pains in me. Like this was something I was really, unhappy about. And back then, like, again, we are talking about 8 years ago in API. We have also loads of, blueprints, and later on open API specs. And I was like, we can do so much with this data, right? We can say, hey, like you want a pagination, you don't need to reinvent it again. Like here is like 90% of APIs or whatever. Yeah. Something is using this kind of pagination or that kind of, create user, even going into more semantic, meaningful things, not just, technicalities. But even like you want to create a user, hey, this is like how majority of APIs are creating user or whatever. Like why are you designing APIs or the URLs over again, JSON payloads, links, whatever it is, right? It's like bike shitting all over the place.
And it's increasing the surface area for more bike shedding.
Yes, because then you need to do documentation for it, right? over and over again. Every time somebody comes with a new idea how to log in or do endpoint for creating a user, then that means a new documentation, right?
Yeah. I thought it was interesting how you started with documentation and how the whole industry started with documentation. Because I think even like one layer above that is this it's exposing a need to allow two people to collaborate with each other. There's, you're creating the documentation for this consumer because you want them to be able to use something you built. And I think one of the most interesting things about sort of what you've been working on at Superface is it feels like tools for a long time have been kind of segregated with like consumer API tools over here and like producer API tools over here. And it feels like Superface is trying to maybe look at it as a unified thing between both sides of the relationship.
Because this is like massive chasm in between these two parties. Like every since back in the days, we were mostly the providers, backend guys, the API guys, those gods who will give you the API, you consumer, you client developer or front end developer, and you are listening to us. Like, these are the methods, these are the payloads, this is the documentation. You are at our mercy, right? And that was for a long time like that. And I think, one of the big success of the GraphQL, or reason for the big success, was like the pushback from the consumers. Like, yeah, we don't want to be in your in your hands. We want to just like what we want. We like whatever, right? So there are these two parties, like in the chasm between them. And first, like, we were pressing them, then they were pressing pressing us, and then that's where we ended. Like, the misunderstanding, and then if the situation is like this, you will never solve versioning. You will never solve these fundamental problems. Like in hypermedia world, clients and servers have to work together in certain way in order to not break, right? This is why web is working, World Wide Web. But we are two camps barely talking to each other. If something, then one camp is throwing stuff at the other camp. Like, here is our GraphQL service, and good luck your endpoints being fried down with a stupid query, right? And or the other way around. So like it's clear that something needs to happen here, right?
And I know you have thoughts, Aidan. I can see them.
No, just so I thought I had an interesting framing for that problem, and then you just like blew my mind with that. Because all the things people don't like about GraphQL, like all the complaints you see on Hacker News threads that go 40 messages deep, are talking about how you can abuse the server side of the relationship. And then now that I'm thinking about it, all the things people get upset with the REST side is because like the consumers don't have the control or can change without them knowing about it, and like all those kinds of things. And this framing of sort of like the god on either side, like that's not what anyone wants. So like, what's the middle way? Like, this is a really cool framing to work from.
Yeah, other risk of that obviously will please nobody. We are going to give it a shot with the Superface, and just trying to find a way where actually both parties can the most of the touch points, they don't need to be there. So obviously one of them is the documentation, but they don't need to be there. Like, what you want to do for an available distributed system is to limit the number of touch points, right? And then only have a very little, as little footprint as possible that somehow needs to be communicated and shared and kept in sync, right? And right now we have a whole lot going on, documentations and I don't know what, like tests, keys, develop accesses, whatever. To basically make the connection possible. Now we want to reduce this and negotiate those parts. So these parties don't even need to talk to each other, basically, to connect their systems and get what they want, right? So on one hand, you can think about it as a software engineering and some computer theory, but at the end of the day, the APIs are just social creations, and are about these two camps and how they interact and how they connect.
It's just the people game. It's just the people working together on the back end or the front end, and trying to find ways of brokering those relationships and what people want to accomplish. So like so how do you feel about that in the automation of this? It seems like we need to acknowledge that the humans aren't going away. We're not going to replace them out of this equation. But if we're smarter about acknowledging what humans are good at and what humans are not good at, we could get better at creating, minimal touch points, but like keep the humans out of there to a certain degree, and automate as much as of what we can, but be honest about, all right, what can't we, and where do we need the humans to be in there mucking around?
Absolutely. There will be humans, and there should be humans, writing the software, connecting the software, but they don't need to, read JSON schemas in order to turn them into other JSON schemas and do all this kind of sort of stuff. and I like with any other automation, like the early 747 airplanes, the jumbos, they had 2 flight engineers on deck, right? And then and they were like, the craft was flying, they were doing, I don't know what were they doing, like shuffling the gasoline from left to right, whatever they were doing, right? And then eliminated through automation the need for one of them, and then today there are no like flight engineers on deck. And the craft still can fly, and the people will get to from A to B or whatever, right? So these engineers can do better things than just watching the gauges and trying to do something that can be automated. So that's I guess the story with the human automation. And obviously people are thinking about losing their jobs or to automations in general. But I see this is more opportunity, especially in programming. We need more software than ever to what is happening. We need more connections. We need more digital connection. More businesses will be selling digitally more and more. And these people, that we should not be using human power to just doing this, like reading JSON schemas and doing that kind of silly work.
Yeah, the documentation clearly is just for humans, but one of the points that I'm always trying to write on, and I question whether I'm right or not on this, is that the Swagger, the API blueprint, the open API behind that documentation, it's about how do we bridge and get to where we need to be and get all these people to the future. And the fact that it went from, human creatable, the documentation was made by humans in a wiki or whatever, and the fact that it went machine readable, but we're still powering the human documentation, but we had this machine readable, it felt like we were making steps towards that automation and squeezing humans out of it to a certain degree, that we still need the documentation. But here in 2021, after a decade of believing this, I'm not so sure.
I have a clear opinion on this. I don't think this will work and I don't think this is a way these formats for long-term future. They are suppressing the syndromes, but not really curing the thing, right? Mm-hmm. They are making lives with the documentation, with mocking, with testing, whatever, easier, but they are not solving the fundamental problem, and that's being these humans reading this instruction and connecting the machines, the softwares together. So as such, I think we need a different approach. We need a different sort of metadata being shared at the runtime, and the critical thing here is at the runtime, not at the design time. So there will be some metadata available at the design time, but there must be now metadata about APIs shared at the runtime. That will help, this autonomy. That will help softwares to go out and seek and connect. And these formats, they could have been used at the runtime. I did a lot of research. Like, actually, it doesn't matter whether Blueprint or Swagger or OpenAPI or RAML or whatever. That's not the point, really. Like the concept of having some description format for API. We did a lot of researches back then how those could be leveraged at the runtime to solve some of the problems, but in their current shapes and form, that is not possible.
Yeah, the smarter the two participants in this, the server and the client, are, the more the more flexible the system is, and the more discoverable it is in a lot of ways. So I think ideas were like in the right direction. I'm curious kind of how you see what you kind of see as that, or maybe this is a good time to sort of tell us and the audience a little bit more about what Superface is actually trying to build.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch a little bit on hypermedia, I think and I love that idea so much, and I really wanted to succeed, but I kind of gave up on thinking or trying that the hypermedia would be the thing. Even in all the attempts with JSON-LD and adding some semantics into it, I just think it's way too complex, and and you would need a super discipline and understanding of all that to make it work. So we need something somewhat more simpler, and that's what Superface is trying to be, really. Just provide metadata about APIs and share them at the runtime. What am I looking at? Oh, that's
sorry.
That's a long time ago. What is the? Oh, that's 2014.
Yeah. So this is.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh man.
So
no.
Speaking of hypermedia.
Oh, here they
Okay,
are.
so this
Here
is
they are.
this is that panel he was talking about. So Kevin, Stephen Klabnik. There's Kevin.
Oh wow.
There's me. Look at me.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah,
no, I think you did a good thing here.
Hypermedia. That panel right there was all the hypermedia providers trying to figure this out, like in a time. And so, I've watched several times over and over the right solution not win. And I'm fascinated by our obsession with like doing this right and doing this well in such an imperfect world. And so I've got maybe I'm just totally jaded now, but like I just don't believe there's a right solution. I don't believe that there's one way to do it, and there's always going to be multiple ways that we're going to do it, and it's always going to be a mess. But maybe I'm just messed up at this point.
I think you are 100% right, and but we need to be aspiring to something. We need to be trying. I mean, not to find the right solution in the sake of this will rule and all or anything, but that aspiration needs to be here. If it won't be here, it will be like, okay, there's no right solution. I just do whatever everybody is doing, then we will not get anywhere, right? So there is some hope, if you will, that you need to have to or foolishness in some sense.
Yeah.
That you need to have. Like we were promising with APRA that we will solve your API documentation. That was a promise. People were so desperate with API documenting their APIs that they rather learn API blueprint, than writing the documentation by themselves. This is how what was the situation, and did we like really help them? Like yes, we I think improved something, but really they still had to do a lot of work to get it to a good documentation. So, but and this gave us all what we have now. So that this hope and this a quest for truth or whatever, the right way has to be there. Even yes, these ways are never right and never perfect, definitely. So here I am on my quest to find a way how to connect these things autonomously without as little intervention or with as little interaction as needed.
So connecting the dots between the design time and the runtime world with the example that I gave earlier, because this is relevant in my day. So I'm pulling 200,000 open APIs so that I can provide templates or little bits that people can reuse at design time. So my frustration with discovery, API discovery is, programmable web started in 2005 and we've had all these years of API discovery existing, and we've never solved that one. And I believe it's we have the wrong reasons on why we're trying to find an API. I think that's the root of it. But so I'm trying to get to, I have all these open APIs. I was like, oh, I'll make a search engine on them so people can find APIs. Nah, you Google for that. You Google for an API. We don't, but I want to be able to ask these design time questions to potentially reduce redundancy at runtime. I want people to go, oh, I'm building a healthcare API. Oh, fire specification. Oh, drag drop, digital health record. Oh, I don't even have to do any design. Boom, API launched. I'm good to go. Or at the very least, I'm like you said, I'm building a user. Oh, I just drag and drop a user over. Why would I reinvent the wheel? Users have been made over and over and over. all the way down to pagination and the specific, so that at design, at runtime, there's less patterns out there, because I feel like that's where we're amplifying it. Is that people sit down, I have a need, I need this, I need a user for my app, I need an image, for my app. I don't have the time. Oh, there's no tools to go find it. Oh, I'm just going to make it. And then boom, at runtime, now we've got, 383,000 image APIs and 420,000 user APIs at runtime. And so I feel like these are connected at the hip. There's a relationship here as far as how the mess is. And we've got to come up with a tooling for people to go, oh, and it's not schema.org. I mean, I wish it was, JSON LD. Like, we need people to just be able to say, oh, I just want that. Give me that. And then have the database and have it scale and do everything, and then have the API. But I don't know. I had a point and I lost it.
I 100% agree again with you, except for one thing. And that's, you say API. And I think you as a consumer, you don't care about an API. You care about the capability, the stuff you want to do. So what you said minus the API, so image API or payment API or whatever, right? You want to do payment. You want to, I don't know, understand the image. You want to do this and that. And that's the actually answer how to solve this. And that's also the answer what I think is wrong with the current formats. Because you have these things mangled together. You have like what you want to do mangled with the technical implementation of how some engineer decided to design it or implement it. If you look at a simple thing as a GitHub API, they have actually two APIs, graphical and REST, for the same thing. The capability would be give me a repository or pull request open, right? And then only secondary, do you want to use REST or GraphQL or whatever kind of API to it, right? But you care about give me the open pull request on a repo or stuff like that.
I really think there's something like very interesting about that point of view in the GitHub example. One of the things I've been frustrated about with software for a long time, and when I was working on my like GitHub Copilot competitor years ago, all the user interviews I did. All the user interviews I did, it was before it, but it was basically similar kinds of ideas. But one of the things that was sort of an interesting value proposition that I heard engineers talking about all the time was like, I can import, code that will like do this one thing for me, like parse this date, but I can't import a user system, and I can't import like a credit card processing system, and I can't import the forgot password, which is actually like a complicated thing to build with a lot of rules. And I think that like this idea of like capabilities is actually really, really liberating when you think about designing a system, because if you can make all these things modular, you can pull them together the way you want to. So like, it makes sense we have a payment API, but like, it'd be really great if there's a way I could just like do forgot password or do something more application centric that I wouldn't, a whole company built around. But all those capabilities are like what these big companies have all over the place, encoded in APIs, but also like not written down as an independent thing. Like you say, it is very coupled today. So there's just this general principle, I think, that like we kind of are missing in the whole industry across APIs and code. Like, how do we share these capabilities?
And I think, we as engineers or technical people, we are like kind of blocked or squared by this term of APIs or bundling an API, whereas that's just a technical mean how to actually do it, transfer the capabilities. And we should not be designing it like you have a business, the business of some products, right, or services, whatever, and they they bundle them based on whatever the business think it's good for bundling, or putting their products on their shelves, or however they advertise them, not on some technical is like API, or whether it can fit in one track or whatever. So we are now trying kind of to impose this product thinking and on a technical term, on the technical vehicle being the API. And I think we need to decouple these two. And the moment we do it, that will be very liberating, and it enables us like very new approaches.
Well, and I totally agree with you on the focused on the API. So as I see the evolution of my career, it started with database, but we won't talk about that. But in 2000, it started talking about, service-oriented architecture, but the application programming interface, where around 2008, it became API, and it's abstracting away. And I've long argued that, APIs are about applications, but not in the sense of mobile or web application in the sense of applying. I want to apply something. I want, this is an application I'm interested in doing. And I want to say we talked about this last week, Aidan, but I'm on this damn Zoom thing so much, I could be wrong. And what you were just saying, Z, is the conversation I was having with the two PayPal gentlemen who did this RFC, this item potency RFC header, that's item potency key header, that is goes in the headers and makes it so that this endpoint, whether it's item potent or not. And then when it comes down to it, the actual thing we mean is we want the thing that doesn't charge your credit card twice. So it's like us technical folks talk about headers and RFCs and item potency and all these things that no one's gonna, like I'm talking about this to my wife. She's like, what? And I'm like, oh, the thing that makes it so your credit card doesn't charge twice. And so what you're saying is we need to be using that language, right? That's that's the applying of the thing.
And that's actually a third group of people, the business people, and that's a third or second chasm actually, or third if you do it between the backend and consumers.
We're in hyperspace. There's 4 dimensions.
Like whatever dimensions, right? But no, my point here is, so what you are talking about is like talking to business, like, oh, you need to explain the API to a business person, and that they are now selling their products through whatever is called API, and then you need to start like mapping, to their language. So you have now a chasm between the backend and consumers, and then now you have these business people. There is like chasms, yeah. and they are talking all about some API stuff and idempotency and JSONs and whatever, and that's like.
This is how the world works, though. This is language and power to a certain degree. I'm reading a book right now, or listening to it actually, called Braiding Sweetgrass, and it's about Native Americans in the United States. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how words and phrases mean different things. And one of the things she talks about is the phrase Indian giver, which is pretty racist to begin with, but mm-hmm. is like, so what does that mean? And it's a miscommunication between front end and back end, client server, whatever. Is when they give you something, they expect it to be given back because it's not a transactional thing. When a Native American gave you something, it was with the expectation that would be given back because there's a mm-hmm. cycle there. But white people, Europeans who came over, were like, oh, you're giving me something, thanks, sweet. And then when you wanted it back, it's like, whoa, what's wrong with you? Like, and so the semantics of these meanings and what things mean, and that's where the bridges and the divides comes, is you have front end and back end developers, but then you got the business people who are putting things into their tiers and access tiers and product, and then you have the end users. It's like, I just don't want my credit card to be charged twice. I don't care what mm-hmm. business tier, access tier, or the back end. And so it really comes down to that we're all just using different words and phrases, and we've got to, I don't know, maybe there's not a solution.
And that's all right, but there has to be, a way to map in between those boundaries, like going back to this domain-driven design and this ideas of bounded context. So and this goes back to like when we started this discussion today about some problems with the API. I did after API, I did like 4 something years of consulting for some of the largest companies here in Europe, like Deutsche Post, DHL, the entire group, Adidas, the shoemaker, Inditex, which is the mother company of Zara and other brands, and so like. And Volkswagen Group, and these are like massive companies, and the problems with APIs are the same. It firsthand. Doesn't matter what domain, what industry you are in, but one ancient problem there is this data modeling, this canonical data model, this notion of, we all in this massive organization, we will all have one canonical model. We will all call the one thing the same label every single never worked, never happened. I mean, there were attempts, very painful attempts, very big and very expensive departments trying to achieve it. And this is actually, APIs are just like sort of getting the fallout out of this and getting inheriting the problems of these attempts of these large corporations trying to have a canonical data model and trying to make everybody speak the same lingo, and it actually never worked. So this is also another problem, going to documentation, if you will. But yeah, the semantics of the company, semantics of the organization, how teams talk to each other, like very basic things, not really even related to a software technology that needs to be solved and addressed in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I was reading like a book about linguistics a while ago. I can't recall, but if I do, I'll get it added to the description. But they were talking about how like in different parts of human life, like sailors have all their own kind of words that like evolved over the centuries, and people in different kinds of factories have their same words evolve. There's like lingo in teaching, there's lingo in all these different domains of life. And it's not because these are different like subcultures, it's because as you get deeper into something, you need more words to describe it. And I feel like all of our businesses that we're building today that are using information technology domain around them, like we need all this vocabulary, and it is like a linguistical problem that you're almost like, why are we trying to solve it with technology? Like, why aren't we starting at the top and working down? And maybe that's back to that original sin. Maybe we should be going like top down instead of bottoms up. Maybe they let us off the leash too early or something like that.
But this is a double-edged sword, and companies are very often, and companies, I mean API providers here, are very much using this as their point of defense, like trying to develop a different lingo, trying to maybe add some additional features or some niche terms or whatever, because they have better terms than other companies that is doing exactly the same, but doesn't have this whatever word I would say, right? So they are trying to lock you providers, and they willingly are doing it, especially in the more commoditized market. Like sending the text messages or sending email over API. There are so many providers that can do it now, yet we only know 3, right? Those with the best marketing and the Google search optimization. But I guarantee you that there are, others that can fulfill the basic capability in the same way, or even better and cheaper and faster and whatnot. But you will never learn about them because they are on the page 6 of a Google search. So back to our discovery. There is no competition possible in that market on the price, on the quality of service, because the Google search optimization, and this is all now. So now, when you do the API, when you deliver API, you want to be publicly successful, providing you are not in a niche market, then you also need to be very good at the developer marketing and the Google search optimization in order to get your consumers, and then you are trying to log them with your lingo and with your little details.
But then that's JSON LD. Like, so how you optimize for the Google search is JSON LD and using schema.org, and that's how you provide that context. So maybe the linked data RDF folks were right, all along. They were like, I remember them in 2008 to 2010, before the hypermedia wave started. They're like, no, you're doing it all wrong. You're doing it wrong. This is the right way. And I'd be like, well, here's this whole world over here, REST and hypermedia. And they're like, well, we're just going to stay over here and do and semantically get all this correct and define it all out. So maybe we got to go back to those folks and see how they're doing.
Again, I think that's too complex and it will not fly. But now you remember, what you reminded to me, the project Xanadu, right? And Ted Nelson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And exactly in what you said, the right technology will probably not win.
Yeah, no, agreed. So there's a whole laying along the edge of the highway, the technology highway. There's all these projects, and that's how I feel about apiary. I'm sure I'm preaching the choir. Like, sure, you were pretty depressed that things didn't work out and it didn't fix things. But I was pissed. Like, I was genuinely pissed. I even emailed Jacob. I don't think I emailed you, but I emailed Jacob to tell him I was pissed. And I knew it wasn't his fault, but this is kind of how I roll. And you guys did great, but I was just pissed that Blueprint didn't win against Swagger, because Swagger was was shit compared to Blueprint. And then just the whole design first and like, hey, kumbaya, everyone, hey, let's get in it was the best tooling to come together and figure out the semantics of this, figure out the models. It had the hypermedia, which that's always pissed me off because Tony was like, hypermedia is dumb. Tony Tam, who created Swagger, sorry, not to, he's like, hypermedia is dumb and it's not the answer. We're not going to do it. And now they're putting it into Open API and making it have just FYI. So like there was all these things, but it's like I've gotten to the point now in my career where I'm like, oh, the best thing's not going to win. And there is no right thing out there. But I'm with you on that. We got to keep trying and we got to keep having hope. And I'll keep doing that. But we just got to find, like, if you think about like Urban Dictionary and slang and the English language and how we've just got to have mechanisms for rolling with it going forward. And there's always going to be these power centers, whether they're professional power centers, youth, regional, that have their own dialects and their own domains. There's going to be formal domains, but power within those work. You got to know the acronyms if you're going to work in the US government. That was the hardest thing for me to work in government, is learning those. So we've got to just build automated systems that roll with that and evolve with that and identify slang and patterns and trends and then pick those up and automate around those, I guess. I don't know. I had a point and I lost it again. Damn it.
The APIs are the frontiers, and it's all right. Like, we should actually design for this diversity, not trying to force some common model like schema.org to everybody. We should embrace the diversity, we should accept it, and we should design our systems around that. Not having one developer portal within massive organization that will say everything will call the tracking number, not like, there are so many names for tracking numbers, by the way, in logistics that, you are just like, okay, how difficult could it, how difficult could this be, right? I was hired to harmonize or create one unified API for tracking, like parcel tracking. Like, how difficult this could be. You give it a tracking number and you say where it is, right? Oh, we were doing it for 2 years, and it was hard because there were so many different systems calling things differently. But yet we manage it. It's possible. The APIs are the frontiers. They need to advertise what language they speak, and then there need to be some sort of mapping between the languages. But we cannot keep the central data model and impose it on everybody who wants to use our system. There needs to be a discovery. There needs to be some shared understanding and how to, transfer those boundaries. But we need to design our systems for that. And so far we are not doing it.
Yeah. One of the interesting API projects I worked on was the Oxford English Dictionary API. And I went to Oxford and talked to the whole team that manages the Oxford English Dictionary as well as the API on top of it. And then they walked me through, it was a full day session, and they walked me through the history of how the dictionary, so how they started. This one guy would walk around the United Kingdom with little slips of paper from different communities of words that people were saying, and he would put them in his little bag, and then he would make a list, and then he would track how many times it's used in this place and this place, and he would track the spread of it, and then all the way to now, like how they do that, and then how they manage the mapping between different languages and the meaning. And so I feel like we need to go back to these folks and have them manage a portion of this for us or something like that.
Yes, but there is a risk with, reaching to these very smart folks and trying to, yes, we need to learn from that, and we totally should listen to them. But I think that's why we ended up with RDS and JSON LDs
Agreed.
And all that stuff.
Agreed.
So
and the Western, the Western world view of language, I think there's a reason why English is the leading language, and it's not because it's the best language. It's not the best format. I think it's because of other business and political forces. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So that actually, there's a point about the best technology doesn't always win that I think is sort of mind blowing, that someone left in my head and I haven't been able to get out of it for a while. But I was like, why doesn't the best technology win? And so I was like, well, take the word technology out of that question. And I was like, oh, that's why, because I was looking at it through the frame of the technology, and there's all of these other forces. And I think we just have to be open about those other forces. And I think the best sort of innovations are able to, there's things that just sort of ride with the current, and then we end up with the same old problems, but amplified or slightly better. And we're two problems. Like I think that our software isn't predictable. Whereas, if we can ride with the sort of current of the developer, but also get this principle thing in there too, and find a way to ride that wave, we can actually like make the best or the more best thing win. And I think those are just like choices. But when someone said this to me like a year ago, and it's been like stuck in my head since then.
That's a cool point. It's not about, it's not always or only about the technology. It's really the time, the place, the other constraints, the economy, the whatever pandemic is going on, or all these things combined together. So was API Blueprint better than Swagger back then? Yes, maybe it was, but was it like considering all that people actually wanted to generate more from the code and designing it first back then, and taking all this into account? And then maybe no. Yes, yes, it was like in the technological aspect, maybe yes, it was better, but maybe not in the overall package. What was going on with the API world and with development at the time. And I think the best summary of this is the General Magic movie, right? I believe you've seen that one. The story of basically somebody coming with iPhone many years before the iPhone, and why it didn't fly. Yeah. It's that.
Yeah. No, and it brings it back to storytelling for me. Like it really comes down to who's got the best story and who's got the ability to tell that story in a simple way that resonates with folks, and then amplifies and puts it out there. And so, the Amazon myth story, which is now super old, that had powerful effects, and we know their APIs suck. The design of their APIs, just RPC copied and pasted, but they work. And my S3 API, I haven't not replaced that library since 2009 or 10. It's been operating and functioning. And so it shows how the right technical or the best technical doesn't win, and that business is what gets you there. But then I'll ultimately say it'll only get you so far, because the politics of all of this are going to, Amazon's politics aren't playing out the best right now when it comes to maintaining that, their APIs are a standard, because, S3 just works, and we're just going to emulate and replicate that. So there's much more to it than the technical. The business is definitely huge.
I love the part about storytelling. That's so much truth. Like there is actually a story about every successful technology. Like the story around GraphQL, right? Mm-hmm. It's a myth, maybe it is not. Who cares? There's a story, like why it happened, like why people were oppressed by evil bacon people, and and try to do stuff. And so there is a story that's getting people excited. That's getting people, getting them on board. And that's maybe actually the answer. So develop the story, and a lot of companies, and I'm sure like some marketing experts know this better than I do, but many successful companies across different industries are very much using the storytelling to be successful. And so you identify yourself with whatever they are talking about, and then you are just buying, right?
Yeah. What it's all about. The GraphQL, I wouldn't say it's got several compelling stories that have made it, one, taking on REST, like REST sucks, you should do something better. But then there's the actual technical merit. It actually has a lot of benefits to people, but that power story, putting power, I'm just trying to build really cool reactive apps, man. Like, get out of my way, let me do it. Let me be me and do what I do best. Stop limiting what I'm trying to do. And so it's got a very, I'm, and so that's the power of storytelling. But then it's got to have that longevity, which I feel GraphQL does technically. But it's gotta, that story, as it reaches the wider and wider audience, it's gotta resonate and be resistant to the next wave of stories, that GRPC or event driven, is way cool. Like, you just wait for things to happen. You don't even have to go build them and request them, you don't even have to build a query. It just comes to you when things happen, and so, like, being resistant to the next wave of stories that coming along is going to be the difficult part for GraphQL. So
yeah, I totally agree.
So we're approaching the time. I always hate this because I'm always like, we should just go longer. We should just talk more. But I'm learning that doesn't always make sense, even though I do like to talk APIs. But so what's next for you, Z? What's you just got off a little bit of vacation? Are you more vacation time?
I just finished a little vacation, and now we need to go out with a Superface story. The story of how I see software connecting autonomously, going out, finding out the other the providers of the capabilities you want to use without the need for operators. You will just program the machine to do what you want to do, and not sending JSONs around or figuring out technical details. So sharing this story, showing how it can be done, that it can be actually very easy, and actually can give us the room to do finally something that matters, because a lot of projects today are just suffering through integrations, API integrations. They want to, I want to do this new thing in hospitality, or I want to, I have this idea about this and that, and they find out that they need to spend days and weeks and months and years with integrating all the crazy systems they actually need to get in there. So that's I think, like, right now, one of the biggest hurdles in innovation. So going out
that's the biggest barrier I see to the API economy, or we'll lose the API. The economy is us in the API space. Like, well, it's gone mainstream now. APIs are mainstream. Every company needs to be doing APIs and wearing APIs, doing APIs. I'm like, yes, great. We're one. Like, as API evangelists, this is what I want, right? Everyone. Wait, no. I actually don't want my printer becoming an API specialist. I want them printing. No, I don't want my Italian restaurant to become an API. I want people doing what they do best, and then the rest just works. So work on that story.
And I think this is actually coming from you from many years ago, when you were talking about this digital wholesale presence with APIs, like a long time ago. And it's still, there was still, like, when the web was a new thing, World Wide Web was a new thing, people were like, or businesses were like, oh, should my business have a web page? Should I hire this webmaster to, to do, like, nobody's asking this question today, right? And I think you were saying this, like, not a year ago, but 5-6 years ago, that, like, this question today comes to API, and obviously the answer is yes, you should have the API. Now it was accelerated with whatever was happening, right? But how do we navigate in all this world where every business will have an API to their digital, or digitally available capabilities of those businesses, right? Like, this will happen. I mean, it will eventually happen. I mean, but how we will navigate it, how we will survive that, how we will connect all these, how we will get these out. You can have
I was gonna say, my daughter wanted a website, and I've had her domain since she was born, and I'm like, I'm gonna teach you web design, and you're gonna learn to build websites. Taught her WordPress, taught her handcrafting, taught her GitHub pages, all these, and she's like, I don't give a shit, Dad. I just want a website. And she went and found her own software SaaS service where she's like, I want a photo album. I have a photo album. I can upload photos. I want a place I can write and journal. Oh, I can journal. I don't care about web design, Dad. And so that's what I'm hopeful for Superface is people. I want to do what we do, and then I want my data syndicated and my content syndicated. I want it in my partner stuff. All of it to just work.
Oh, that would be my dream. Like having a farmer who wants to sell a milk digitally, not on the web page, but like having an API that somebody can. Oh, I'm looking for a milk in this location. Oh, I have it. Deal, bring it. and and like imagine today what this farmer would have to do. You know, that's just ridiculous.
Amen.
Don't trust people who, I just say, well, last comment. Don't trust people whose title ends in master. It just never goes well.
Exactly. I agree with that. I agree with that one. Well, I look forward to those stories. I look forward to continue helping you, consuming them, but helping talk about them. And because I believe in the Superface vision. I'm just not sure how we're going to get there. You know, that's what so I look forward to helping you, figure out this storytelling, because I don't think it'll be one story. I think it'll be many stories.
There's a whole new world. Thank you.
We'll get there. Well, I trust you. I trust you as someone been telling stories about what you build and what you do for a number of years. I'm looking forward to what you have cooking. So.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and come back when you're ready with a demo. We'd love to do it on air.
Totally. Oh, it's coming this autumn for sure.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Be safe.
Thank you, Z. Go have that beer.
Oh yeah, I will do. Bye bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. I do adore Z. Like his brain, like. There's been a few times that, like, sitting around the world, that I've just gotten in really deep conversations with him. And then some of his talks, that's why I had to dig up that photo on that talk from Detroit. That was an interesting
You guys
time.
all look so young.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but yeah, it was a different time, different world for sure. But it's interesting to rekindle it, because the whole hypermedia thing, the linked data stuff, all of that's super fascinating. I don't spend enough time thinking about that. And I did a lot of contemplating back then about linked data, hypermedia, what's the future, how's this going to work? And it's very reminiscent of right now with REST versus GraphQL versus event driven. So like, I'm curious to be having these conversations with y'all in 10, 15 years again, and seeing where we're at.
Well, last week we were talking about, how it might not be called the API lifecycle anymore. And I think Z's word capability might be something we need to think about next time.
Yeah, no, capability. I'm big on capability. I like resource. The old word resources still works, not in the strictest Rastafarian sense. I like capability because we all want to be capable. We want, a buffet of capabilities for our organization to do what we do. And then I've sparked some interesting discussions internally at Postman with your story and evidence. There are a lot of people are really latching on to evidence. So I think we're going to have some more conversations about, evidence-driven life cycles and how and why that matters, because I think that speaks to the velocity that we either want or desire, or we can't help it. We're all moving fast, and you've got to have evidence of why this matters and why this is happening to move forward. So, anyways,
awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear the word was useful, and looking guys.
All righty. Well, enjoy your weekend, sir. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Ken. Thanks so much. This has been really fun the last couple of weeks, and I'll see you next week too.
Yep, we'll be talking. I got some more other API lifecycle stuff I want to talk to you about. So have a good weekend.
All right. See you later, Ken.
Cheers. All right. Another one. It's always interesting to kind of think through this with Z, especially because he's been at it for a long time. I love finding these folks who are still trying to crack this one and figure it out, and eager to find those solutions. It helps me be not as jaded, and gives me more hope that we're going to move this ship forward. So anyways, and again, it's all about the storytelling, huh? Alrighty, I'm going to shut it down. See y'all next time.
It's story time. Time to start the day.